Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're jumping into something uh, pretty intense. It's based on source materials, exploring this really provocative idea.
Yeah, the idea that parents, often with the very best intentions, trying to protect their kids and guide them towards success,
Right.
might actually inadvertently be making villains. That's the phrase used.
Making villains. Wow. That's a heavy starting point. So what's the source material telling us here? What's the mission?
Well, the sources we're looking at combine psychological analysis with some specific wisdom teachings. They really zero in on what they call a critical error.
An error.
Yeah, the error of using fear and especially comparison as the main tools to shape a child's behavior. So our mission today is really to unpack that belief system underpinning fear-based success.
And to look at the cost,
Yeah.
right, psychologically and spiritually.
Exactly. The spiritual disconnect is key here.
Okay, so here's something for you, the listener, to maybe keep in mind as we go. If the aim is a successful adult, why does focusing so hard on external rules, on just complying, end up potentially stripping away what the sources call a child's inner power?
That's the core question. Let's dig into how this fear mechanism actually operates. Because, the starting point isn't usually malice.
No, you wouldn't think so. It's protection, surely.
Almost always. Parents are often acting out of their own fears, maybe fears passed down through generations. Fear of failure, poverty, social judgment. Then they want to shield their child.
Okay, so the intention is good, safety, but the method,
Yeah.
that's where the sources say the problem lies, this comparison thing.
Precisely. The method is flagged as the root of the error. This fear-based parenting, while aiming for protection, leads to what the sources term critical errors.
And comparison is central to that. How does that work?
It's described quite bluntly, actually, as needing to sacrifice others.
Sacrifice others, what does that mean?
It means parents hold up examples of, well, failure. Often people they know, family members, friends, as warnings. Like living cautionary tales to keep the child on the right path.
That's harsh. It forces the child to look down on someone, doesn't it? To see them as just an example of what not to do.
Exactly. It objectifies them.
But I mean, isn't some comparison normal? Like learning from others' mistakes. Where's the line between a helpful warning and this sacrificing?
That's a great question. The line, according to these sources, gets crossed when the goal shifts from teaching resilience or discernment to just installing fear. Fear of being less than, fear of ending up like that person.
Okay.
It becomes weaponized comparison when parents use what's called the language of control. It's about creating this direct, scary link. Stray from the path, and misery is guaranteed.
And we see that in the example cited, right? And things like,
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't study hard, you'll end up like your Uncle Jack. Uncle Jack stops being a person with a complex life story.
he's just a warning label.
Right. Or maybe using someone's struggles to enforce specific rules, like religious or cultural ones. Look at Auntie Magdalene's life. See, she didn't follow the rules, and now she's miserable. You don't want that, do you?
So the lesson isn't empathy for Auntie Magdalene, it's fear of her fate.
It's enforcement through fear. The child learns, okay, to get approval, to be safe, I must not be like them. I have to judge them, keep my distance.
And what does that do to the child unconsciously? What's the message sinking in?
The deep message is, those who don't conform, who fail by these narrow standards, they're somehow less worthy. They're suffering, kind of their own fault for breaking the rules.
Wow.
So the system works in a way. It scares the child into submission. It creates this pattern of almost blind obedience to external expectations.
Yeah, that sounds like it builds really rigid foundations, like emotional handcuffs, if your self-worth is all tied up in not being in the negative example.
You spend your life terrified. Terrified of failure, terrified of judgment, terrified of stepping outside the lines. It stifles genuine self-discovery.
Which takes us to the cost then. The sources say this approach, meant to build strength, does the opposite.
Definitely. They're very clear. Fear doesn't make you strong. It breeds, and this is a direct quote, resentment, anger, and self-righteousness.
Resentment, anger, self-righteousness. Okay, if that's a toxic mix, how does that shift happen from trying to protect to creating resentment?
It happens as the child internalizes that judgmental lens. They grow up, and that binary view, success equals obedience, anything else equals failure, becomes their default way of seeing everything.
And everyone.
And everyone. They lose the ability to see nuance, complexity, or even, the shared humanity or divinity in people who live differently.
So it basically fuels intolerance.
Absolutely. The adult outcomes described are pretty stark. They tend to become intolerant of anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of success or right living.
Because they followed the rules and succeeded.
Exactly. They often develop this deep-seated belief that their rule following makes them superior. Their success feels entirely self-made, earned through sheer compliance.
Which means they might look at others struggling and think,
Well, they just didn't try hard enough, or they made bad choices. They deserve it. There's a lack of compassion, a failure to see systemic factors, or just, different paths.
psychologically, it sounds like they're constantly defending their own choices by judging others.
That's a great way to put it. And connecting this to the bigger picture, the sources argue this rigidity makes them resistant to deeper learning. They become, quote, almost impossible to teach about life's richer truths because they're locked into this external checklist mindset.
Okay, that's the perfect bridge to the spiritual side of this. That intense focus on external actions, the rules, the societal approval.
Right.
The sources call this a spiritual disconnect.
Yes, because the child is trained from day one to look outward for validation, to prioritize man-made rules over any kind of inner knowing or connection.
They're starved of something internal.
Precisely. Starved of the connection to what the sources call the true source of power. They become masters of performing, but lose touch with their own inner presence, their intuition.
And the sources are saying true power isn't about nailing the external stuff.
Not fundamentally. True power, true success lies within. It's in connecting to that inner divine source or divine spark, whatever term resonates. It's about aligning with an inner truth that goes beyond just following rules or fearing failure.
So this isn't just psychology, it's tapping into older wisdom traditions.
Yes, the material explicitly references teachings from the sacred Atlantean Brotherhood and insights from Grandmaster Waxira.
Yep.
And this tradition teaches that real success isn't about accumulating external wins. It comes from spiritual awakening, realizing that your power, your worth, comes from connecting with that divine spark inside.
Okay, so let's circle back to that making villains idea. If someone is successful externally, good job, follows the rules, but got there through this fear-based, judgmental path, why call them a villain? Isn't success still success?
Not according to this perspective, because that success is built on a foundation of division, judgment, and superiority. It's success defined against others, like Uncle Jack. Grandmaster Waxira puts it very directly.
What's the quote?
Fear-based success creates villains. These are individuals who believe their success is their own doing, while failing to see the divine presence within themselves and others.
Ah, okay. So the villainy isn't necessarily about doing bad things. It's about the spiritual blindness, claiming all the credit, judging others, and missing that deeper connection.
Exactly. It's mistaking compliance, or maybe just luck, for inherent superiority. And crucially, failing to recognize that same divine spark exists in everyone, even the people they're judging.
Right. Okay, so we've seen the psychological damage, the spiritual cost. It feels quite overwhelming. How does someone even start to break such a deep, often generational cycle? It can't just be stop comparing.
No, it's much deeper. The path forward, according to these teachings, really has to start with the parents or adults looking inward.
Introspection.
Yes, consciously questioning those fear patterns. Where did they learn them? And really recognizing the harm done by constant comparison and judgment, even if the intent was protection.
So acknowledging the impact first. Then what? They need to actively model something different.
Absolutely. It's about shifting the whole value system they transmit. Moving away from constantly feeding anxiety about the future, about failure.
And
Instead, actively nurturing love, compassion, acceptance, and importantly, spiritual alignment in the present. It means changing the conversation around success and failure entirely.
But how do you do that practically? Society still pushes external achievement so hard. How do you model love-based living when the world seems to demand fear-based results?
It involves teaching the child that their real success, their true worth, doesn't come from ticking boxes or following external rules perfectly. It comes from awakening their own inner wisdom.
So encouraging intuition, self-reflection.
Yes, and maybe even service that comes from the heart, not obligation. It's about showing them, through your own life, that inner peace, listening to your gut. That's where real guidance comes from, not just external pressure.
So failure gets redefined too. It's not ending up like Uncle Jack.
Right. Failure in this model is losing touch with your own soul, your inner compass.
And the ultimate goal for the parent or adult.
is to be the example, to embody that spiritual wisdom, to show, not just tell, that inner peace and connection lead to a different kind of fulfillment, one that's sustainable and shared, not exclusive. It's about demonstrating that shift from fear-based thinking to love-based living.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. We've explored this really difficult idea that raising kids, primarily through fear and comparison, even trying to protect them, can create adults who are judgmental, disconnected from their own inner spirit, focused on division.
And convince their success makes them superior, simply because they follow the rules better than others they deem failures.
A tragic outcome.
Deeply. And the way out, the healing path, starts by recognizing a fundamental truth. A child's worth, anyone's worth, isn't tied to rule following. It's inherent. It's about their connection to that divine spark within. We need to heal those generational wounds of fear to foster real wisdom and inner power.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with maybe one final thought to reflect on. Drawing from Grandmaster Waksira's wisdom. If true success is the alignment of spirit, mind, and soul, what's one small thing, maybe even today, you could do to seek that inner peace, that intuitive guidance, that spark, instead of pouring all your energy into external compliance or worrying about how you stack up against others?
Yeah, just a small step towards inner alignment. Something to consider.